I've had quite an interesting day. Talking to Vincent Bruno earlier, and a few other notable exchanges. So Vincent, we know what Vincent's like, and he thinks it's a good idea to basically let different people have sex with each other, and he can't see the harm of it. And I did try to explain it to him, and you'll be able to find the stream in which Vincent and I had our conversation timestamped in my blog post. And anyway, I came away with 2 ideas. That was totally unexpected because I wasn't even planning to stream with Vincent, but he was on. I posted something in his live chat and he invited me on, and we had a very interesting chat about his idea of how to make sex cheaper. Hello, Assad Z2. I'm well, thank you, and I hope you're doing well. So, how is this to be done? I guess in the good old days of people taking marriage seriously, the rule was nobody was allowed to have sex with each other unless they were married, and only men and women could get married, and only men and women not within the forbidden degrees of consanguinity could marry, i.e. You can't have an incestuous relationship, because the whole idea of preventing that, forbidding that, is to prevent degeneracy. Now, a lot of, racist people, let's not put too fine a point on it, say degeneracy is caused by people of different races having children together, but I don't think it is necessarily so. You see, I don't think the next generation is entirely dependent on the genetic stock of their parents, but also the upbringing they're going to have. So it's 2 halves. I mean, obviously you're very much helped if both your parents are healthy and from a good family, and you're going to get all the advantages of having 2 healthy parents who love each other and whose families cooperate with each other to help bring you up. And obviously you're going to be suffering from a severe disadvantage if you're only parented by your unmarried single mother who has a string of unsuitable lovers who might sexually abuse the child of the woman they are living with and having sex with. And that, I think, was the beginning of the pedo problem in the West. And these degenerate practices that began in the West started affecting other parts of the world because it's just a thing that people copy whom they think to be successful without thinking through the whole thing. So that there are eugenic reasons for marriage, and the rules of marriage, which are that the married couple should stay together for the sake of the children, and they will have a better genetic stock too, because if the man and the woman were probably thinking of what kind of parent their child is going to have, and choosing their spouse for the right reasons, then their offspring are going to come from a better genetic stock than a woman who wasn't thinking about these things and randomly allowed herself to be impregnated by random men that she might meet. And of course, added to that would be the upbringing of her illegitimate offspring in a fatherless home, not being sent to a decent school, and of course you are invited to imagine well, you don't need to imagine. All you need to do is think of how badly your society would fare if most children were brought up in that way. But Christine Ramsay doesn't care, or she can't make the connection, or she will pretend not to understand, even though she's Catholic, and Catholics of all people would be expected to understand how these things work, but apparently she doesn't. Presumably because she thinks she can blame it on Jews or Muslims. So the degeneracy caused in the West is really nothing to do with Jews. I know a lot of people like blaming Jews, but if they see any Jews that are in favour of sexual liberation, then they would be liberal Jews, and liberal Jews don't get their liberal ideas from Judaism, but from liberalism, which is a Gentile conception and creation. So obviously liberalism is the problem, and liberalism in the 21st century just means sexual liberation from the rules of marriage and good parenting. But back to the question of Vincent's idea. So he was saying marriage is obviously too inconvenient for men and women. So he wanted to make it easier for people to have different partners. So his idea is to allow attractive men, or men found to be attracted by women, to impregnate more than one woman. I'm not sure if I've got the whole thing right. So that they can be legally polygamous, but yet not be obliged to pay for them. So it doesn't really make that much sense. I guess I'll need to ask him about it again. So he's basically saying that attractive men can have sex with women and impregnate more than one, and not have to pay for them. I think that's what he's saying. So I asked him, well, what about the not so attractive men that women wouldn't find so attractive? And he basically said, well, they can have sex with each other or with transgender men. If I got anything wrong, you can post your questions to him in the link I gave to you below on his video. So his idea was obviously to make sex cheaper and to let unmarriageable men have sex with each other, so they don't, get sexually frustrated and go on gun rampages and become mass murderers. So I think that's his idea. And in the meantime, we can go our merry way. But I don't think this is a good way of proceeding, because a lot of mixed up kids will be produced who will hate the world, hate themselves, hate their parents for having such a terrible upbringing, and therefore the next generation will be in trouble. So what is to be done? I mean, obviously restoring the patriarchy would be the option, but that would mean the raising of the price of sex, which, for people completely addicted to the idea of cheap sex, that would be unacceptable. But how would we get people to agree to it? And I've got an idea. I think, since men are so useless now, we won't even bother asking them. We will get women to vote on whether they want to be a matriarchy or a patriarchy. I know some of you will say that's very high risk. There's no telling them, no telling which way they're going to jump. So while I say that no men should vote in this proposed referendum of mine, I'm not saying all women should vote. Obviously, the insane women shouldn't be allowed to vote, and the underage females shouldn't be allowed to vote. But what about women in their 20s? Women in their 20s don't show much interest in becoming mothers these days. So, and perhaps they don't know their own mind, and they won't know their own mind until their options have been played out, until they get to their 30s, when they begin to think that they might like to be married mothers, but see the window of their opportunity closing, because, as a woman approaches her mid-30s, she will be perceived as infertile and not good mother material. So these women might have regrets that they might wish to acknowledge, and they might well vote for a patriarchy, because they might say, well, the reason why I didn't get married was because I couldn't find any decent men. But a patriarchy would produce more marriageable men than a matriarchy, and that's a problem with our matriarchy now. It produces so many unmarriageable men who are incels or gay or transgender, or just couldn't afford to bring up a whole family on one income, sending the woman out to work, and the woman probably thinks, well, I'd rather not have to live with a person who can't support me, and I think I can manage on my own, or something like that, and thus it will make men and women less likely to marry. So I think the women in the age group who should take part in the proposed referendum about whether to live in a matriarchy or patriarchy would be women in their 30s and 40s. Because, they would be the women who already know that, they've missed their, opportunity of getting a decent husband. Obviously for women, the best quality husband would be acquired in the prime of her youth and beauty, i.e. in her 20s, and after 30, things tend to go downhill for women. And so they would have their regrets, and they might, acknowledge it and say, well, I wish I'd led my life a different way, but I didn't because of the culture and the expectations, the career expectations that were made, that I felt I had to fulfill, and all that sort of thing. So honest women might say, well, I wish I'd gotten married, and if life were a bit different, if the world, the rules of behaviour were arranged in a rather different way, then I would have got married, but because they weren't, I didn't, and I see the difficulty here for women in their 20s now, and I don't want them to suffer from the same problem, and therefore I will vote to restore the patriarchy with secular Quranism. And that would be the decent thing for these women in their 30s and 40s to do. So I would be hoping that it would work on that basis. So what do you think, people? I think that would work quite well. And you know, it's like there's no point even talking about the men. They might want this and want that, but you know, really, women should decide, and you know, hopefully there are enough rational, honest, and moral women left to think, well, we, you know, on the whole, we would like Western civilization to continue in our Western nation, and the only way to make it possible in the long term is to choose is to adopt secular Quranism, because you know, if we carry on like this in our matriarchy, then the human stock of the national gene pool would continue to deteriorate, with all these unmarriageable men and women being produced by our matriarchy, and that would be a terrible thing, you know, just letting Western civilization degenerate and die, and they would like to save it, and we can let these women vote for a patriarchy. Obviously, there's a risk that they might think, oh, you know, let's carry on with matriarchy, but I think a informative public messaging campaign, and my being on the airwaves to explain the benefits of patriarchy to these women who will be participating in the referendum will make things a lot clearer for them. And this is a risk I'm prepared to take, provided, I mean, obviously I would like, you know, to be given all the airtime I need to make my point, and you know, including well, what would I need? How would I explain the situation to them? I think the BBC can easily rustle up a few, you know, programs and game shows and discussion programs to make it clearer to you know, women what they ought to choose. Why won't I let the men choose? Because it's like, well, the men are always going to. I actually don't think they deserve to be consulted after what they've allowed to happen. And since, you know, okay, I keep talking about the matriarchy, and therefore I should acknowledge the fact that there is a matriarchy, and that is who I'm dealing with. And so the matriarchy would be, you know, women, and these women, you know, if they're just going to vote for more matriarchy and let their, you know, civilization crash and burn, then I guess, you know, Western civilization deserves to die. But I think there is a chance that they might vote, you know, to have more marriageable men, rather than allow things to go in the way that I've described, as you know, Vincent Bruno was explaining about how to make sex cheaper, so that only the most attractive men get to breed and have sex with the most attractive women, and the rest of the unmarriageable men will be forced to have sex with each other, and that's it. That's how it's going to be from you know, our deepening matriarchy. So it's an apocalyptic prediction, is it not? But I think I have to thank Vincent for making it, you know, so starkly clear what is, you know, where we're all heading for if we are allowing our government to give us ever wider varieties of extramarital sex to take our minds off things. We will find that under these conditions society will become more chaotic and criminal, and oh, it would just be a shame when, you know, the obvious solution has already been explained to you again and again and again so many times, but nobody cares. But I think it's a pretty big idea. It's one of my many big ideas that I hope will have some kind of traction. Some maybe some feminists would be interested in discussing this idea. It's not like I'm going to tell men to ignore women or whatever. I'm just saying, yeah, let's get only the women to vote to either restore the patriarchy so they can be married mothers again, or vote for more matriarchy and accelerate the decline and death of the West. So that's really all I wanted to say. I hope you can remember it and maybe pass on the message to others, and maybe get the other bigger YouTube channels to discuss it, or invite me to discuss it. So thank you very much for listening, and I said it all in under half an hour.